Hello there folks, welcome to my YouTube channel, a place where I discuss different topics about spirituality, introspection, psychology to a certain extent, sociology, answering different questions on Quora, and usually discussing on topics that require a bit more introspection that many people are able or aware of, and I just prefer giving people some value, providing them with some of the wisdom I have acquired throughout my existence, and well, giving people some answers to questions they might not feel ready, or they simply cannot answer, or well, they're not introspective enough, or they simply look for another interpretation. Now, everything that I say, I prefer reminding people again and again to take with a grain of salt, because everything that I present is part of my own experiences, my existence, and all the sources that I have come across. So, my truths may not necessarily be applicable to everyone. All this being said, let's dive into today's topic. And today's topic is a concept that has been inspiring somewhat fear in most people, and it is the concept of apocalypse. Okay, apocalypsis in ancient Greek means a lifting of the veil, a period of time in which the illusions and the constructs that have been built, right, as a mental prison, and well, a multidimensional prison actually, fall. It's a process that is exactly like death, okay? Many people have been fooled in time to believe that death is just some simple process that occurs, when time runs out, and it's like poof, and then you're no longer, right? Now, it would be most wise to understand that the process of life and death are actually one single process. There is theoretically and practically no such thing as death. Death is theoretically a process that, and practically, that takes place at the same time with life. Everything in this universe is physical, and this physicality can only be bound by memory. Now, what memory is called, or karma, in the Eastern sciences, okay, especially the yogic sciences. Karma is what I used to call when I was very young the universal laws of existence. Basically, if this universe, and this universe kind of already is a kind of a video game, then this karma is nothing else than the code that allows this video game to run. Now, one has to understand that ever since they are born, the process of death is actually occurring. It is a, how to call it, lifelong process, if I could speak so. So the point about life and death is that they are two parallel processes that go on at the same time. However, the point is that technically there is no such thing as death, okay? Life in its entirety, happens, and it degrades in time because the quality and stability of the memory also degrades in time. Everything that is physical by nature is also temporary, because that's how life chooses to experience life in this, let's call it, in this universe, in this dimension. And why life chooses to experience things like this? Well, there are many things that people have to understand that will always remain beyond the idea of control and beyond the idea of the mind. People aren't taught how to control their emotions, and also, more importantly, their mind, and therefore they will always seek to control and to try to control things, but defining things that are beyond the mind will only create a very small illusion of knowledge, and therefore a small illusion of power, because most people will think that the illusions that they have created gives them some sort of power, and therefore they're thinking that they actually have some sort of power, but they're only prisoners of their mind, and well, unfortunately they're kind of playing with themselves. Now, I don't want to speak too much about this, and for a very long time the apocalypse has been seen as, a dictionary definition would be, the apocalypse is something more like religious shaped, okay? the Bible and religion in general, Christianity. I don't know about other religions, so I won't be presenting that. But technically, every culture, okay, every big religion or religious belief that existed and well still exists, even if it doesn't exist, but we know of, all great civilizations have, from a religious standpoint, several points in common, and one of them is the so-called end of the world. And according to dictionaries, the apocalypse is defined as, you know, um, the end of all things, right? When it is said that the forces of good will prevail against the forces of bad, but the earth will be ravaged. So the point is, what's the point, okay, of all this, right? Like, what's the point of the good forces winning over the so-called bad forces, right? If the earth is wholly ravaged, okay, and then like there's literally nothing remaining, right? Like, we don't need good forces and bad forces to fight for us, right? So that a so-called good part wins, and in the process, like, literally we're always gonna be wiped out, right? Like, we can actually wipe ourselves out easily, okay, if we just use our nukes. There it is, like, funnily speaking, there is really no need for positive and bad, sides to actually fight. We can actually take care of destroying the planets quite pretty well, I can say, okay? Like, we're doing quite well on our own. Now, the point about the apocalypse is, it's actually much deeper than that. The apocalypse, as an ancient term, was used as, a level up in a way. It is said that consciousness will seek to experience in the name of expanding, right? Through any possible corner, okay? That means creating all possible worlds, and consciousness will simply replicate itself and multiply in that world, in that universe or multiverse, whatever, and it will expand and it will try to experience everything that is possible, because consciousness is always and will always be on a continuous expanse. So it will always create rules that will shape worlds, and it will always live in these worlds to experience whatever possible. However, those worlds will exist based on some coding, and that coding will allow certain events to happen, and certain events won't be able to happen because they're either beyond the logic or their time is up and they no longer will be allowed to happen. So, this being said, I really hope people understand the principle that everything that happens in this universe may indeed happen for a reason, yes, but the point about this is, well, everything tends to be a lesson, okay? Even if it is a lesson in disguise, that's how consciousness seeks to experience, okay? Because the truth can never be taught, okay? If you know people, or if you think that you want to teach the truth, that only will make you a tyrant, okay? Because the truth is never universal, okay? People forgot that universal means that applies to the whole universe, not only to our planet. That is why our sciences are just a bust, okay? They're just a waste of time in many situations. And, they're usually a distraction, like most other things in the mainstream. They are used like a distraction, because whatever we are trying to do is, as everyone can see, everyone is pointed outwards instead of inwards. Everyone is pointed towards stars, towards, like, in the scientific communities you will see things about exoplanets, black holes, and also many things outside of us that are simply far beyond the comprehension of our mind, okay? You will see so many documentaries about black holes, but we ain't even seen one. And worse than that, we are using the logics, okay, and the physics of our own planet, physics that we don't even fully know, okay? We don't know, I can bet, more than 20%, let's say, than what our planet houses, okay? We don't know so many of the species this planet houses, okay? Most of our investment has always been in war, okay? In diseases, right? In warfare and military technology, right? but there has been very little invested in our own selves, right? In education, which education means to bring out of ignorance. But as you can see, society is very sick because everywhere you look is literally ignorance. So many people who just act like they are some kind of NPCs in a video game, right? It's like the apocalypse is already today. If you haven't been noticing it, well, you'd better open your eyes better, because technically we are living an apocalypse, okay? Now, there is a concept that I'll probably make a video on it some other time. This concept is called predictive programming, okay? Now, predictive programming means that many events will be staged in such a way that will actually shape people's beliefs, okay, and understanding towards a certain idea, so that when it happens at a large scale, people will simply embrace it, okay? And you can easily do this when you have, masses that are simply ignorant, okay? Because, well, think about Big Brother, for example. Why do you think Big Brother has become so mainstream, right? Because Big Brother is nothing else than a taste of what some of the oligarchy want for humanity, right? They want bondage and slavery. Why do you think there is so much porn? Why do you think there is so much trauma nowadays? Because everything is used as a pretext to feed into negativity, chaos, right? Into separation, because, well, that's actually the point, okay? The more pain is created, the more certain metaphysical beings actually get fed, and the more control they can establish in the world, right? It has been predicted by numerous ancient civilizations, and, well, no one could do a thing, because this is what the universe chose to experience. And there are cycles of life in which spirits, again, newer and newer facets of consciousness come to experience, and they go on and on again, right? And there will always be those who will come from different higher realms to also aid, because irrespective of how much you get to advance, right, in terms of consciousness and expansion, the point is you'll always be drawn towards experiencing more and more, because there are so many, there's an infinity of universes, and consciousness is constantly expanding, so there is no shortage of experiencing, okay? And regarding control, the point is that this structure has been built, okay, on control. This matrix, as it's called, has been built throughout time on control, and predictive programming has been used, especially through the mass media in the last century, right? And it became more and more fashionable, because there have always been TV shows, like Big Brother, for example, which made it look very fancy, right? It was actually almost a trend, that people would get in houses, and they would live for a whole year or a very long time, being fully surveilled, right? And people would actually watch this, and in time they would actually be programmed to accept that. And that is how you got so easily cameras all over, right? Don't forget that most of these people who are actually NPCs are nothing else than drones who serve the system. They will fight for the system, because in time parasites beyond our world have managed to infiltrate bodies, have managed to corrupt many weak minds, and actually very many minds simply agreed to cede their power, right? To give their power in return for riches, or luxurious life, or ultimate enlightenment. But unfortunately, the subconscious contracts they have been signing meant that they gave much of their power to such parasites, okay? And that would hinder their natural development, okay? Because everything develops, the planet will keep the planet will keep evolving towards 5D consciousness, okay, which will happen from 2021 onwards, right? 2021 will be a year which will be much more prolific in this, And the point about this is that these parasites are actually losing a severe battle because it's technically the battle for their survival. These parasites require pain and fear and anguish, right? Any sort of pain, emotional, physical, any sort of pain to simply feed themselves. Why do you think throughout history there have been plagues, okay? Because humanity has been dealing with plagues for a very long time. Even if many people didn't know exactly what a bacteria is, there have always been those who could, who had clairvoyant abilities, and having knowledge, beyond what was currently known, they could easily create different diseases, right, in cellars of, dark castles, and then spread those diseases through crops. And well, that's how you got the dark plague, right? But if you look in history, there are numerous other events, and these events are similar in the sense that such diseases suddenly appeared in multiple parts of the world, right? Well, somewhat closely related, somewhat close one to the other, and a lot of people actually died because of those, and their death was painful because guess why? Pain actually feeds these parasites, right? And creating a lot of pain actually has a lot of discarnation, okay, forceful discarnation, and those facets, okay, can actually become lost souls that can be parasited, okay, and many beings ceded their power, okay, to such ethereal beings seeking enlightenment, but becoming bondaged by such subconscious contracts that said, okay, but I'm gonna take control of your consciousness, okay, and now these parasited facets of consciousness, like let's call them parasited souls, but I don't believe in souls, I prefer calling them facets of consciousness. These now do the bidding of their overlords, okay, and these beings have to enter again in life, and well, according to the rules of the matrix and the universe, if you fail to understand certain things in life, you will never break the vicious cycle of reincarnation. Now, the reason why these facets of consciousness are, forced into reincarnation is, well, in a way to improve them, because all the pain they're going through will serve as great spiritual wisdom much later, but it will actually force their vibration low, because that's how they will be kept control of, right? And as this control is exerted, once they are incarnated, they will always be thought to incarnate in negative environments, right, where other parents, which again they are themselves parasited by such beings, and therefore their awareness is low, so they won't be thinking beyond their instincts, okay, their basic functionalities of life. The point is they will be again and again abused, let's say, and this abuse will cause them pain and will ensure that they will also become parasited again, because these parasited facets of consciousness must not be allowed to gain their freedom, right? That is why so many people are waking up, because their vibration is increasing so much that many of these controlling parasites are simply becoming less and less compatible, okay? So this means that as the lifting of the veil occurs, right, and the matrix is starting to be seen more and more for what it is, more and more people will start to wake up, and this is a losing battle. And you have to understand that a parasite is nothing else than a being who exists only at a level of survival, okay? There is no such thing as happy parasites, okay? Parasites only exist at the lower level of survival, okay? And as they seek to survive, everything is expandable. So you have to understand that these beings, okay, controlling the oligarchy and some of the secret societies, will always do whatever possible, and you have to understand whatever possible, to simply make sure that this planet will not be inhabited by us freely, okay? They will gladly destroy everything than give us the planet and the the freedom that is our birthright, okay? They would be able to launch a third world war, nuke the planet, cause as much separation as possible, because again you have to understand that these beings don't simply want to kill you, okay? It's exactly like the disease, right? If they kill you, that's basically the cure, because once you are killed, once you leave this physical body, even through pain, yes, you will actually become free, right, from the grasp of this matrix, right? And you can actually have a well, if you are a more advanced soul, you actually have a choice, right? Everyone actually has a choice, right? After people perish, they will get through everything they have done in life, and if there are things that they still don't accept to go over, right, in the so-called afterlife, they'll have to reincarnate so that they learn certain lessons, right? And that is why most people keep coming, in the repetitive negative cycle of reincarnation, right? So the point about this is, um, you will always be a much greater source of food for them if you suffer, because that's, if you look carefully, and well, you can literally attest, if you have a brain and you're awake somewhat, it is always much more profitable, right, to preserve the disease rather than actually come up with a cure, because the cure can actually make money, but there is so much more pain from the disease, which means more food, and there is so much more control that can be inflicted through a certain disease. And well, you can actually see the lockdown and the such. This is probably the puzzle piece that can actually allow you to finally understand that every time society tells you that something is for your better good, right, for the greater good, that's nothing else than saying, okay, like, that's gonna be for the so-called greater good, but that will cost you another few freedoms of yours, right? As you can see everywhere, lockdowns, mandatory masks, and there is a logical thing in this, okay? Because if the disease is much more profitable, you can easily understand that there will be no such thing as vaccination, okay? The vaccination, the mandatory vaccinations will be done, but those things won't be COVID things, okay? They will be most likely the aspects of a different virus, right? And therefore a new plague will be planted in people, right? And it will be done in increments, and therefore there will be a huge problem, because everything is controlled through food. In this construct called the matrix, everything is more or less GMO nowadays. Everything is controlled through food, okay? It's enough that they will give you certain inactive viruses, okay, within you. These can also be triggered by different chemicals that people eat, right? Like, the dead meat that you are eating, shampoos that you may be using, right? Toothpaste, and every other thing that keeps you at a lower vibration, right? Coffee, smoking, okay? There's always a great care when such things are orchestrated, because these people that are ruled by such parasites, you have to understand that these people are always united. There is no color difference in between them, and there is no rest for them, okay? These people, they're not necessarily people, they're just facets of consciousness that are still under a very severe hold, right? These beings cannot simply sleep, because your pain is actually their food, right? And being parasites, they require other beings to gain their energy from. That is why they will do everything possible to parasite people, right? And most likely they have parasited people for thousands of generations. They have learned the deeper aspects of the human body, how to break the mind, right? How to manipulate the mind. That is why after the Second World War, you've been seeing like such a rise in the quality and the aggression of ads, for example, and consumerism and the such, because most of these people nowadays are nothing else than the zombies you would see in movies like, I don't know, The Walking Dead, right? Because if your awareness is that of a zombie, you're technically one, right? And there are so many people who actually, like act like NPCs, and these people will always be taken into account and highlighted by society because they are the same vibration, right? That is why it will be, it's always been difficult for the the awakened ones, or people going through their awakening, because if you can think for yourself, most people will frown upon you, right? So understanding that in this apocalypse, right, everything will seem to turn against everyone. There will be a lot of separation because unity is the only thing that can actually save humanity, right? But with so many people living in a low awareness and so much ignorance on the planet, ignorance indeed is the so-called apocalypse, okay? The apocalypse like the dictionary definition, right? Ignorance is the only apocalypse, right? But even the people who are NPCs are starting slowly and surely to become players, because the planet simply evolves towards 5D, and this process can only be delayed by wars, famine, and there will be famine for sure, because think about that. No one speaks nowadays about the floods that have been in China and in South Korea and other countries, because nature has, said enough. I've had enough. And even nature, because nature is a living being, this planet is also a living being, and its consciousness growing more and more will simply trigger a lot of, cleansing. Okay, the planet is actually healing, nurturing, and cleansing herself, and this cleansing means that blockages will actually dissipate, and as blockages dissipate, they will manifest in physical form. Okay, they will manifest through storms, floods. Okay, because think about yourself, when you are in enough pain, you will cry. The floods are also a way of the planet that she cries, and through those cries, okay, much of the negativity upon it will actually be purged, right? Because the planet itself is indeed a great alchemist. Okay, she has the power to turn negativity into positivity, but unfortunately the warfare that is fought, okay, for this planet to fully reach 5D is actually a very severe and great one, fought on multiple levels beyond the physical that most of us can actually see, right? And even in some of my lucid dreams, I would see myself as a soldier. In one of my lucid dreams, I actually took part in defeating something huge that lied beyond clouds, but the clouds were of different color and the sky was somewhat red, much like in this picture. And the dream finished itself, finished with a huge explosion, and me and my crew came back to the planet in a shuttle, and I was the rear gunner shooting down debris and meteors that were coming to our ship after the so-called huge explosion, right? So in this so-called apocalypse, be prepared for anything. Okay, be prepared for any idea like fake alien invasions. Okay, don't forget this can actually be a concept. If you ever get to hear something about fake alien invasions, this is gonna be a hugely staged aspect, just like the walking on the moon was staged. Many people still believe it was true, but it was actually revealed and well banned that there was this huge well-known director who simply created the moon landing, and now there's gonna be 7D technology that's gonna be used, right, with alien invasion. They won't necessarily invade the surface, I would say, just like you would see in the War of the Worlds or something like that. You will have most likely you will have cyborgs finally revealing themselves, right? Because the army and different governments have been investing greatly in that, right? And there's a race to make humans and turn them into machines, because this way the point is that they are easier to control, right? And there have always been in secret labs different testings, right? Like even demon DNA and different parasites, right, mixing themselves with humans and creating human hybrids, okay, and all sorts of human hybrids that are more complacent so that they can be used by governments. to infiltrate different organizations, right, that would fight against them and create sabotage. People all around the world say that everything is staged, right? All sorts of riots are simply funded, and every time there is a protest there are these insurgents, right, that pop out of nowhere, and they create violence and start reducing the vibration of the peaceful protests. There are people that lie hidden in different buildings and use 5G apparata, okay, and this technology of the 5G is used to control the masses, and I'm not talking about 5G the internet. 5G is a branch of technology that has been used by military and it's actually used by many forces. It is used to calm down, actually not calm down, but it is used to control people, because 5G is a technology that vibrates at a very low frequency, which is similar to that of fear, right? And it is actually used to enrage people, right? When you have a so-called riot, you can actually bombard the area with 5G from different antennae, and even telephones can be programmed to emit 5G. Just because you are programmed to believe that your phone cannot emit 5G, it can actually do, and it interacts with your auric field, and it actually can force you to become more enraged so that more damage is done. And in all these riots there are people who are paid, right, to control the masses, right, and turn a peaceful protest into a savage, almost like civil war, so that governments can easily come and put you into custody and remove as many of your rights as possible. And there are also people who have been paid for sure to enter these riots and cause havoc, like throwing bricks at so-called police cars, to show through the news that police has been abused. So therefore there is a reason for the military and other control forces, right, to fight and repress any other such protests. And there are even paid groups that have specific buildings as targets that they have to raid, right, as a so-called part of the protest, so that they ruin different businesses. It can actually be done, right, if a certain protest, like if you're in a capital, right, and you have a business there, it can actually be affected by the local government if the government deems your business dangerous and there is a peaceful protest that would take place. Your building can actually be taken into account. You will be programmed through this to believe that the so-called initially peaceful protest resulted in your building being raided. But you have to understand that most of these protests are true. They are fighting against the oppression and the stealing of our liberties. So if you take into account this apocalypse, there are so many things that can happen. And 7D technology has been used even in, for example, League of Legends tournament opening, when there was that dragon flying around and it looked so real, right? 7D technology can be used to create spaceships, in the skies, and there will be so-called aircrafts fighting, and most likely we humanity will lose to those illusions, and there will be all these like aliens, 7D projections of aliens marching down the street. A lot of people will be simply executed. This can actually be used as a means to freely reduce the number of people, right, without any real invasion taking place. This may actually sound very bad, but if you do the research, there is actually a lot of planning for 7D alien invasion, right, for a fake alien invasion. You can check different channels that have been speaking about this, like the famous Ralph Smart or any other people, okay. There have been many people who have predicted a fake alien invasion, and well, that dream of mine actually told me that there's gonna be an alien invasion, but it's gonna be a staged one. There will be, even by the end of this year, I bet there will be a few leaked sources about aliens, because aliens are already in here. They have incarnated and embodied humans. They have been using secret underground facilities to clone humans. That's how some of these celebrities have been made. Like, ever wonder why their bodies look in a certain shape? Like, some of them don't even look like the human genome could actually have them, right? And they're always made to look visually stunning and appealing, so that, you know, they use different dark symbols and rituals, so that, you know, they bind a lot of demonic power to those beings, and, you know, like demons of lust, for example. And that's why many of the celebrities appear to the masses as, you know, like irresistibly hot, right? People gone missing, especially children, right? Ever wonder why there is such an explosion of transsexuals, for example, right? So many millions of children are gone missing, right? Many of them are used in experiments, many are kept in cages, so that their pain keeps fueling these parasites, because you have to understand that these parasites only exist in the idea of survival. So they will literally do you anything possible so that they can provide themselves with food. You have to understand that these beings are fully apathic. They simply are based on survival, and that's it. They're just like an animal that is constantly starving. They constantly need energy, and that is why they are constantly draining humanity, and especially children. There have been accounts given and recordings of raids done against underground facilities, and thousands of children have been liberated, because children are vulnerable, they are easily exploitable, and causing them pains will always do nothing else than feed these parasites. And these beings keep such children in very miserable conditions. Many actually, you know, film them. You know, they create different videos of them, and then they blame certain countries, you know, that you know, the government in that country simply mistreats children, and there's so much poverty, you know, begging for funds, right? And many people, out of, you know, humanitarian needs, are naive enough and give their hard worked money, right, to such organizations which are nothing else than the corporations controlling this, right? Think why the media, like 80-90% of the media, is controlled in the USA by 6 mega corporations. In China there is one single mega corporation that controls the whole media, and also through the Chinese party, right? There are so many things, okay, that point to the fact that we are actually living the so-called apocalypse. And now the flooding that has struck China so severely, and other, I think, South Korea as well, but especially China, okay, and a lot of their crops have been you know, wiped out. The problem is China is also a great supplier of food, and most likely this matrix will come up with so-called fake food shortages, okay, in which they will simply control the food supplying, so that most people will have shortages, right, just like they will say, but they will also say it in the last moment. So learning how to create your own agriculture will be of a very critical point, right? This is actually an eye-opening video, because these are predictions that people have been saying. The Ethiopian calendar is actually 2012, right, which is the end of the world according to the Mayan calendar. And the end of the world is actually nothing else than the end of the world as we have been knowing it, right? The end of the matrix, because the matrix is falling. It's actually done, it's actually finished. There is nothing else to be saved. Again, the war is still raging on. You will see a lot of, you know, restrictions, much more severe restrictions, and anything possible that you can imagine, because it's the last fight that these parasites have against us, and they will definitely not give our freedom, you know, the freedom that is our birthright, because that means their end, right? However, you have to breathe calmly and become as introspective as possible. There will also be new diseases, because they will seek to create new viruses. The vaccines that many people will volunteer for will actually, most likely house inactive viruses that through different toxins that you're eating like junk food and the such will activate sooner or later, and they will create other pandemics, right, which are nothing else than pandemics, because everything is being planned 50, 60, 100 years before, because that's how these societies actually work. They have clairvoyants that can actually see through the future, and they have powerful, well, I call them psintegrats. It's a word that I found in Sins of a Solar Empire, the Advent Race. What I call a psintegrat is basically a person who understands psychology and psychiatry very well and can use also occult knowledge to shape people's beliefs, just like predictive programming works, right? Why do you think there are so many videos about the end of the world, right? Post-apocalyptic worlds? Because the more you have people think about that, the greater the chances that such a reality occurs, okay? Because your thoughts, okay, there is always a personal reality and there is the collective reality, and based on whatever people think, okay, and imagine and accept, right, every time people watch, or a mainstream movie about the apocalypse, right, the end of the world, doom and gloom, many people think, at least subconsciously, that that can indeed be a way the world ends, and this actually feeds into a possible reality that that would actually happen. Fortunately, the masses, having such lower awareness, their power to manifest is also very low, and there are more and more people waking up, meditating, embracing nature, and in the end, the 5D world actually is coming. It will actually come, and well, it's not actually a physical place, right? It's a place of meditation, right, where people will actually meet in astral form, and they will actually enjoy a much happier life, as everything will remain doom and gloom for the masses, and most likely they will enjoy new prisons in new mass media. The most urgent thing that I'm asking the whole humanity to take into account is the internet blackouts that will most likely happen, because separation is the greatest super weapon that these parasites have, and it is important to simply unplug yourself from the mass media. A thing which will happen, it will actually start happening more and more. Most likely people will come up together and create an app of their own, right? And this app will manifest in a certain way. Probably it will be an app for people who are waking up, and people will actually start waking up more and more. Many people are actually abandoning Instagram, because Instagram has always been a target of digital narcissism. People always interested in posting fake lives. Look at me, I'm so happy, look at my rent car, but I actually own it, and all sorts of things like that, right? So you have to take into account that mass media will be wiped out. It will actually be closed, because that's what the universe wills, and even these parasites have to abide to certain laws, because as the vibration increases, everything that they hold control through of this planet falls one by one, and mass media will also falter. Many of them will actually turn against governments. Many governments will actually fall, because have you ever wondered why we have leaders, why we need leaders? We will always need leaders and governments as long as we cede our power, right? As long as we run away from our potential, from our authenticity, right? Like so many people are. That is why we actually have governments, okay? Why do you think it's called governmental, right? It's governmental work, because it's governmental, right? It governs the mind. It tells people what to do, and the drones simply comply. So make yourself ready indeed for any of these like apocalyptical aspects, okay? Make yourself ready for this, because they will sooner or later come. These internet blackouts will come, because no parasite wants beings to be united, because when you are united, especially in nature, that is why people are constantly kept indoors, right? And one of the greatest counters of the coronavirus is the sun, because the sun allows your skin to produce vitamin D the more you stay outdoors. If you do sun gazing, You can actually help open your third eye faster. Eating healthier foods also does that, and you can actually start seeing beyond the illusions of the veil, right? Beyond the illusions of the world, and that's something that these beings are actually afraid of. Because if you ever meet a demon or a parasite, you will feel so weak around them, not because they are strong and they are leeching your energies, because they themselves are so weak and fragile. And through your empathy you can actually feel how weak and fragile they are. That is why they constantly seek energy to feed from. Again, their purpose is an important one, because without their existence consciousness wouldn't experience, and in the end we are just actors experiencing in the name of consciousness. This is your only purpose in this life: to learn, grow, expand, and experience. That is the only purpose of life: to learn and experience. And consciousness is so dependent on this. Mark my words, consciousness is so dependent, okay, on experiencing and expanding, that it actually puts the whole universe at your feet, right? That's how much power you have. You have the power of the whole universe just to experience in the name of consciousness, okay? That's how powerful a drug experiencing life is to consciousness. That is why to consciousness and to 5D consciousness and beyond, love and unity are so powerful, right? This is why these are also so important, right, for consciousness. All this being said, hopefully you like this type of video. Don't take this one lightly. It's actually an empowering one. It's actually a very important video to prepare the people who are waking up. Please feel free to share and like this one. Feel free to especially share with people. Like and subscribe if you feel drawn to the type of content that I'm creating. But again, the most important thing is feel free to share this with everyone, because it's actually gonna help a lot of people. No one will actually warn people. Well, there will be, a few people, awakened people, awakened people who will warn some others, but their numbers may not necessarily be enough to warn as many people, especially the ones who are still waking up. There is a great war coming against us, and it's a spiritual warfare, okay? Unless you start embodying the so-called spiritual armor, well, the war is gonna be much more difficult. And you have to understand that very soon economy will also collapse. There will be no more money, there will be no more system, and there will be no more governments, especially for a lot of countries who will actually finally realize, and the populations will actually realize, they don't need a government to actually control and tell them what to do, so long as communities are wakened up, like awake enough to simply lead their lives as they should, right? And people will be learning that this new economy that will come will be based on value providing, okay? Provide value to others so that you can embrace so that you can embrace abundance. And it will be an abundance of creators and consumers that will each provide for the others, okay? And there will be so much communion, but all these things will be coming in time. But as it is said, okay, so within, so without. People must first purge things within them so that things can be much better. But at first, things will actually get a bit worse before they can actually start getting better, because that's how awakening is. It turns your life into a mess, because everything you thought you were must be destroyed before you can finally reveal that true self that you came here to experience. All this being said, namaste, take care of yourselves, you are loved and appreciated. Feel free to share with everyone. You can also point people to my channel if you feel also, but at least please share this video with everyone that you know. And all this being said, hugs. Whatever you are doing is the best you can at the right pace for you. You are loved and appreciated. Ferenc Board signing out.